The old radio sat on the dusty shelf, silent for decades, a relic of a bygone era. He found it cleaning his grandmother's attic, a place frozen in time. He brought it home, curiosity piqued. He plugged it in, turned the knob, static, crackling, hissing static. Then, a whisper, a voice, faint and garbled. He listened intently. The voice grew stronger, clearer. It spoke his name. He jumped, heart pounding. He'd told no one about the radio. How could it possibly know his name? He cautiously approached the radio, a shiver crawling down his spine. The voice continued to speak, a low murmur, but he could make out a few chilling words. Words about his life, his secrets, things whispered in the dead of night, things no one else could know. He felt a cold dread creep into his bones. Days turned into sleepless nights. The radio whispered constantly, a constant reminder of the impossible. It knew things, private things. It chipped away at his sanity. He tried to destroy it, to silence the voice that haunted him. But it was no use. The radio remained, a constant presence in his life. He was trapped. One day, the voice changed. It was no longer whispering. It was screaming his name, filled with rage and desperation. Then, silence. He never heard the voice again, but he knew, deep down, that the radio hadn't finished with him. It was waiting, watching, listening. The old house stood at the end of the road, its windows dark and lifeless, like the eyes of a long-forgotten ghost. Shrouded in an eerie silence, it seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something, or someone. Locals whispered tales of its dark past, stories passed down through generations, each more chilling than the last. They spoke of a family that vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a few faded photographs and unanswered questions. She, a young and curious journalist, was drawn to the mystery like a moth to a flame, eager to uncover the truth. She decided to spend the night there, to experience it for herself, hoping to find clues that others had missed. Armed with her notebook and a flashlight, she stepped inside, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. The air inside was thick with dust and the smell of decay, as if the house itself was slowly rotting away. The silence was broken only by the creaking of the floorboards beneath her feet, each step echoing through the empty rooms. As darkness fell, shadows danced on the walls, twisting and turning into grotesque shapes that seemed almost alive. She felt a presence, an unseen force watching her every move, making the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. A feeling of being watched, of eyes following her in the darkness, sent shivers down her spine. She heard whispers, soft and indistinct, coming from the shadows, as if the house itself was trying to communicate with her. They seemed to beckon her, calling her deeper into the house, urging her to uncover its secrets. She followed the whispers, her heart pounding in her chest, each step taking her further into the unknown. They led her to the attic, a cramped and dusty space filled with forgotten relics and memories of the past. There, she found a wooden chest, its surface covered in strange symbols that seemed to pulse with an eerie light. She hesitated for a moment, then slowly lifted the lid, her hands trembling with anticipation and fear. Inside, she found a pile of old photographs, faded and yellowed with time, each one telling a story of its own. She picked one up, her breath catching in her throat, as she recognized the faces staring back at her. The photo showed a family, their faces frozen in expressions of pure terror, as if they had seen something unimaginable. They were the family that had vanished, their fate a mystery that had haunted the town for years. And standing behind them, a shadowy figure with glowing red eyes, its presence sending a chill down her spine. She felt a cold hand grip her shoulder, and a voice whispered in her ear, "You're next." The words echoing in her mind. She screamed, dropping the photo, and turned to face her attacker, her heart racing with fear. But there was no one there. She was alone, or so she thought. The house held its breath, waiting for the next chapter in its dark history to unfold. The old traffic light stood at the intersection of two deserted roads. It was a relic from a time when the town was bustling with life, now forgotten and left to decay. The light, once a symbol of order and safety, had become a beacon of dread. It had been malfunctioning for years, its colors changing erratically, red, green, yellow, all blending into a chaotic dance that seemed almost alive. The townsfolk had long since given up on getting it fixed, leaving it to its own devices. Locals knew to avoid it. The intersection had a reputation, a dark history that everyone in town was aware of. It was a place where strange things happened, where the normal rules of reality seemed to bend and twist, but they also whispered of a game, A game that was said to be both thrilling and deadly. It was a test of courage, a rite of passage for the brave or the foolish. The game was simple, but the stakes were high. A deadly game played under its flickering light. The rules were known to all, passed down through hushed conversations and daring tales. It was called red light, green light, dead light. They called it red light, green light, dead light. The name itself sent shivers down the spines of those who heard it. It was a game that promised excitement but often delivered something far more sinister. A group of teenagers, emboldened by youthful bravado, decided to tempt fate. They were drawn to the intersection by a mix of curiosity and the desire to prove themselves. They laughed and joked, masking their underlying fear with bravado. They drove to the intersection, the old traffic light casting an eerie glow on their faces. The car's headlights cut through the darkness, but the flickering light seemed to swallow the beams, creating an unsettling atmosphere. The rules were simple: red light, stop, green light, go. But there was an added twist that made the game far more dangerous. If the light turned yellow, you had to run. Run as if your life depended on it. But if the light turned yellow, you ran. The yellow light was a warning, a signal that something was coming, something that you didn't want to meet. The teenagers knew this, but they were determined to play. Run as fast as you could. The thrill of the game was in the chase, the adrenaline pumping through their veins as they sprinted across the deserted intersection. It was a test of speed and nerve, because something was chasing you, a shadowy presence that seemed to materialize out of the darkness, its form indistinct but terrifying. The teenagers could feel its presence, a cold dread that spurred them to run faster. The game started innocently enough. Laughter filled the air as they sprinted across the road, the thrill of the chase making them feel alive. They were invincible, or so they thought. Laughter filled the air as they sprinted across the road, the yellow light flashing in their rearview mirror. It was a game, a challenge, a way to prove their bravery to each other. But as the night wore on, the game took a sinister turn. The laughter began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of unease. The light's erratic flickering seemed to mock them, its unpredictable changes adding to their anxiety. One of the teenagers, a young girl with laughing eyes, hesitated for a moment too long when the light turned yellow. She was gone. In an instant she vanished, leaving her friends in stunned silence. Panic surged through the group, their bravado shattered, replaced by sheer terror. They called out her name, their voices echoing in the empty night, but there was no response. They searched for their friend, their laughter replaced by frantic calls of her name. The game had turned into a nightmare, and they were desperate to find her, to make sure she was safe. But she was nowhere to be found. The intersection, once filled with their laughter and shouts, was now eerily silent. The only sound was the flickering of the old traffic light, a haunting reminder of their lost friend. The only sign of her, a single shoe lying in the middle of the road, illuminated by the flickering yellow light. It was a stark and chilling reminder of the danger they had underestimated. They never played the game again. The memory of that night haunted them, a constant reminder of the price of their recklessness. They had learned a harsh lesson, one that they would never forget. The old traffic light remained, a silent sentinel at the intersection, its colors still changing erratically, a grim reminder of the deadly game played under its watch. It stood as a warning to others, a testament to the dangers that lurked in the shadows of the seemingly mundane. These stories, whispered in hushed tones, passed down through generations, hold a strange power over us. They are more than just tales, they are echoes of our collective fears and anxieties, woven into the fabric of our cultural consciousness. They captivate us, drawing us into a world where the line between reality and imagination blurs. These stories tap into our primal fears, the ones that have been with us since the dawn of humanity. They tap into our primal fears, the fear of the unknown, the fear of the dark, and the fear of what lurks just beyond our perception. These are the fears that have kept us safe, that have made us cautious and alert. The fear of the unknown is perhaps the most potent of all. It is the fear that there is something out there, something we cannot see or understand, that could harm us. It is the fear that keeps us from venturing too far into the dark, from exploring the uncharted territories of our world and our minds. The fear of the dark is closely related. It is the fear of what we cannot see, of what might be hiding in the shadows. It is a fear that is deeply ingrained in us, a remnant of a time when the dark was full of predators and dangers. The fear of what lurks just beyond our perception is a more subtle fear, but no less powerful. It is the fear that there is something out there, something we cannot see or understand, that could harm us. It is the fear that keeps us from venturing too far into the dark, from exploring the uncharted territories of our world and our minds. These fears remind us that the world is a strange and unpredictable place, where logic and reason often fail to provide answers. They remind us that there are things in this world that we cannot explain, things that defy our understanding. Perhaps it's the chilling realism that makes these tales so unsettling. The fact that they are rooted in truth, or at least in the possibility of truth, makes them all the more terrifying. They make us question what we believe, what we think we know. These stories force us to confront the darkness that exists not just in the world around us, but also within ourselves. They make us face our own fears, our own insecurities, our own doubts. Whatever the reason, these stories stay with us long after we've finished reading them. They linger in the back of our minds, resurfacing at the most unexpected moments, sending shivers down our spines and making us question the shadows that dance at the edge of our vision. They remind us that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are not the ones found in books or movies, but the ones that hide in the shadows of our own reality. The fear they evoke is not a weakness, but a testament to the power of storytelling. A reminder that sometimes, the most effective way to confront our fears is to share them, to give them a voice, to let them out into the light. For in the telling, we may find a strange sort of comfort, a shared sense of dread that binds us together, and perhaps, just perhaps, a glimmer of hope that even in the darkest of nights, the dawn will eventually come. These stories, these whispers in the dark, remind us that we are not alone in our fears. They remind us that we are all human, all vulnerable, all afraid, but they also remind us that we are all capable of facing those fears, of confronting the darkness, of finding the light. They remind us that we are stronger than we think, braver than we know. So the next time you hear a story that sends shivers down your spine, remember that it is not just a story. It is a reflection of our deepest fears, our darkest thoughts, our most primal instincts. And in facing those fears, in confronting those thoughts, in acknowledging those instincts, we find a strength we never knew we had. We find a courage we never knew we possessed. These stories, these whispers in the dark, are not just tales of terror. They are tales of resilience, of courage, of the human spirit. They are reminders that even in the face of our deepest fears, we can find the strength to carry on. So let the stories linger, let the whispers echo, let the fear remind you of your own strength. For in the end, it is not the fear that defines us, but how we face it. And as we confront the shadows that dance at the edge of our vision, we find that we are not alone. We find that we are part of a larger story, a story of humanity, a story of resilience, a story of hope. They remind us that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are not the ones found in books or movies, but the ones that hide in the shadows of our own reality. But they also remind us that we have the power to face those monsters, to confront those fears, to find the light in the darkness. The fear they evoke is not a weakness, but a testament to the power of storytelling. A reminder that sometimes the most effective way to confront our fears is to share them, to give them a voice, to let them out into the light. To let them out into the light. For in the telling, we may find a strange sort of comfort, a shared sense of dread that binds us together. And perhaps, just perhaps, a glimmer of hope that even in the darkest of nights, the dawn will eventually come.